Ninjago is full of fascinating, complex, and intimidating villains. There are so many different characters that we've had over the seasons that are nothing short of fantastic. Master Chen, Raz, Moro, Garmadon, Pythor, the list goes on. There are so many fantastic villains, and Ninjago is kind of renowned for them at this point. But then we got into Dragon's Rising Season 2 and we were introduced to the Forbidden Five, this group of 5 warriors that were meant to be the ultimate threat when it came to Ninjago and the ninja themselves, and they were hyped up in accordance with that. And did they deliver on that? Not at all. But there are so many different reasons and so many different things that come into that, so just saying no really does put it very lightly. So in this video, let's talk about the Forbidden Five as an overall, because as of Season 3 Part 2, it seems to be that they're officially gone. If I'm wrong, that would be nice to see. But the thing is that I feel like this is officially it when it comes to those characters. So, let's look at them on an overall, and let's really see if they are worthy of the name, the Forbidden Frauds. Now I will say this, whilst I'm going to go over the Forbidden Five an overall at the end, it feels like you very much have to talk about them by the member. And for this video, I'm going to talk about them in order, from the ones I have the least amount of problems with, to the ones I have the most amount of problems with. Starting with... Noct is definitely the character we got to spend the most amount of time with. Of course, he was basically a season ahead of the rest of the Forbidden Five, and because of it, he feels like the most like a character out of the lot of them. What benefited Noct the most is the fact that because he was introduced at the end of Season 2 Part 1, and then he had to have Season 2 Part 2 to himself, he was actually able to really develop who he was. And honestly, for better or for worse, it really did show what the Forbidden Five could be. He really was portrayed as this force of nature during the Tournament of the Sources. Obviously, he had a lot of help, and there is an argument to be said that he wouldn't have made it as far in the tournament as he did, but the thing is that he definitely was demonstrated to have a lot of power, and honestly, he just came across very intimidating. Not to mention the fact that his design was just simply very cool looking. I mean, I do have a very big soft spot for any character that has a cape, but the thing is that the Noct design very much did translate quite well, and I mean the minifigure is also great. And also, not to mention the fact that his personality was honestly quite good. The mix of this intimidating aspect with a really brutal feel, he was very aggressive with how he was. Honestly, it was fantastic, because not only did he have all of that, it was very much also balanced out by the fact that he did have his moments of calm. And honestly, it just felt very ruthless of him. He was honestly just kind of maniacal. Staring Lloyd in the face as he took his elemental power is so cool to see. Honestly, Noct had so much going for him in Season 2 Part 2, but the problem is that in Season 3 Part 1, he very much had to take the back seat. The main thing for me when it comes to Noct is the fact that they just slowed down on him. In Season 3 Part 1, of course, he had to take a little more of a backseat because all the rest of the Forbidden Five needed to be introduced. And the thing is that Noct was already established, so they didn't need to do too much with Noct in that time, which is honestly just a disappointment because they could have done so much more. But the thing is, like I said, they just simply didn't. That doesn't mean that he didn't have his scenes. In the episode The Great Zane Robbery, he was really cool in that episode. It really did feel like he was competent. It really did feel like he could actually do something, and he actually held a good fight. Honestly, Noct did still have his moments in Season 3 Part 1. It just really felt like they just didn't have too much for him to actually do. Because it wasn't only that as the only good scene from in Season 3 Part 1. I loved his interaction with Noct at the end of Part 1 as well. I think it was a really cool interaction. Of course, in the end, he still loses the fight. But the thing is that he still has a really cool back and forth when it comes to Raz. Honestly, Noct had a lot going for him because he had stuff established. He had time to actually have those things ready for him to go. And that is why he's definitely the best of the bunch. I'm not saying he's without issue. I do feel like there's a couple of things that you could have done to his character, but I do think on an overall, Noct was fairly solid for what we got of him. His main problem was the fact he just took a back seat. But the backseat was no more blatant than the core Season 3 Part 2, and I feel like I do need to talk about that at an overall for the Forbidden Five at the end. But, like all of the other Forbidden Five members, Season 3 Part 2, he doesn't speak, he doesn't really do much, he just stands there and he collects souls. But again, Noct is honestly the one that still got the most of the bunch weirdly, because he still gets to have his fight with Cole. He does still have to have those moments, and it is more than a lot of the other ones. So, even when in context of how bad they were treated did in the last part of Season 3, he still at least had something. But at the end of the day, he is still, in my opinion, the most solid of the Forbidden Five. And even though that's not exactly saying much, it's still something that I can take and run, because I do think Noct was a decent character for what we had of him. Since the release of Season 3 Part 1, Drix has been a very interesting character to me for a lot of different reasons, but I honestly can't really decide on how I feel about him, but he's definitely the second best of the bunch. I've always thought the same thing when it comes to Drix. He felt like he was the one who had the most idea of all of them when it came to Season 3 Part 1. His power was fairly unique, he utilised it fairly well, and he honestly felt very competent when it came to actually going up against the ninja. And despite his very short amount of screen time, he does honestly accomplish what he had very well. It is really interesting to think that despite not getting much, and that is still a problem, he honestly did feel fairly fleshed out. Like I said, it's almost like they actually had an idea when it came to him. And that is so well reflected in every single fight scene he had. You could see how well he utilizes elemental power. He really takes advantage of the power he truly has, and he uses it to his advantage, and that is why he very rarely actually lost a fight. He was very good again in the Prismatic Blade, and in the final battle he also did do fairly well. And the thing is that it doesn't even stop there, because not only does he utilize his elemental power really well, his personality definitely reflects it. He's very quick on his feet, he's honestly quite tricky with how he plays, he really does fight dirty, and that is exactly what you would expect from something like the Forbidden Five. Not to mention the fantastic design. I love the oversized hat. I really do wish that translated to the minifigure, but I also really like the minifigure as well. It was a standout when the sets were released. So the thing is that it really does just feel like he actually had a lot going for him, but it's not exactly like he feels fully consistent. What makes Drix so interesting to me is the fact that he is basically an anomaly. The thing is that the rest of the Forbidden Five are fairly consistent. They're all animal themed. I mean, most of them are even wolves. But the thing is that Drix is just this big swarm of bees. Honestly, it feels like he was there just kind of for the sake of it. But at the same time, I really don't mind, because it really did feel like they did well with him. In similar vein to Noct, and again I'll go through this later, again he does fall down to the thing of, in Season 3 Part 2, he had nothing to do. He didn't even have a fight as far as I'm aware. The thing is that again, he just stood around and he collected souls. The thing is that that's just kind of not good, and it's just bad. But the thing is that they all do it. So it's like, if I judge one, I have to judge them all, and I will. But the thing is that what we did have for Drix, it really does feel like he did well with the very, very, very limited time that he actually had. And it's why, honestly, even though he's only second place, he is my favorite for a lot of different ways, because he stands out to me in similar vein to Noct, with much less time to do so. It goes to show that if you really do want to and you really have a concept that you love, you could very easily make a character in a very limited amount of screen time. It's just, it feels like they didn't have enough at the same time. Drix could have been fantastic, and he could have been a true threat if he actually did have more time to really explore the personality and the elemental power. But at the end of the day, this is the Forbidden Five we're talking about, and they just don't really get that. But overall, Drix is weirdly good. Not as good as Noct, but weirdly good. And this is the end of where I'm going to be the most positive in this video. Kerr is the definition for the middle of the road for me, for a lot of different reasons, and honestly, it's the one character I feel like is honestly kind of the most wasted of the bunch. That mainly comes down to the fact that Kerr is literally the definition of a 5 out of 10 character for me. She does like an equal amount of good things and an equal amount of bad things, and you could honestly argue has some of the most wasted potential of the lot. Kerr has this very interesting aspect to her, which is the fact that she has the elemental power of decay, and by all accounts, it is literally the, hey, let me slowly kill you power. And the thing is that I feel like the writers realized it after they were really writing down what the character actually was. You can kind of tell this is the case because, like I said about wasted potential, the thing is that Kerr only used her power once against Roby, and a lot of people have argued that this is kind of ingenious because doing this to Roby took Wildfire out of the fight. In reality, it wouldn't have made a difference on whether or not Wildfire was in or out of the fight because she didn't really stand up against the Forbidden Five. But the thing is that the writers were very reluctant to actually use Kerr's elemental power, because the thing is that if she did use it, she could have taken anyone or anything out of the fight in its entirety. The thing is that no one can really do anything once Kerr has used her elemental power, so they couldn't use it, because otherwise she could have just defeated all of the ninja in near enough an instant. And that is the biggest problem. Kerr couldn't do anything because of how powerful she truly was. The thing is that Kerr can't accomplish any feat, because if she did, the ninja are just dead. And you can kind of tell that's the case because the fact that she does nothing. When they actually do let her do something, she's honestly fantastic. Like I said, decaying Roby was a really cool scene and really demonstrated the power she truly has. And then she goes and gets the prismatic blade with absolutely no hesitation whatsoever. Kerr completed every single objective that was asked of her when she was actually told to do something. But the thing is, like I said, she just didn't do anything because of how strong she really was. And there isn't a case of an upside like with Drix. The thing is that we also just barely really get any of Kerr's personality. It's not really seen in the show because, again, the lack of screen time. But the thing is that what we do know of her is that she's clearly very pessimistic, very rational, and just very to the point. There's not really much to the character of Kerr, and I feel like that's almost by design. But the thing is that if something like that was explored, it could have been really cool. It could have had a reason as to why Kerr doesn't use her elemental power on anyone and anything. You could have had some sort of conflict where she doesn't like the fact that she uses her power, but ultimately she does because of what her ambition actually is. But no, she gets no screen time. This is why Kerr is very much down the middle for me, because whilst I like the elemental power aspect and I like the potential that Kerr could have had, and like I said, the fact that she's as successful as she is in the season is really cool. Like, that's all really good. But the fact that she gets barely anything else really does even out for me, and that is why she is so unbelievably down the middle. And again, like all the other ones, Season 3 Part 2, she doesn't do anything. I mean, we actually get to see her take souls, which I'll get into that for another character in a bit, but the thing is that apart from that, it is just more of nothing. It really is a shame. There could have been so much to the character of Kerr, so much potential just gone. Hey, but for what it's worth, a lot of people might remember the fact that I never really liked Kerr's design initially, but I will say, I've actually really come around to it. I really like that minifigure as well that was released of her, if it wasn't as much money as they're asking for. But anyway, let's become a little more negative. Zarkt as the character has received a lot of hate because of how he was handled in Season 3 Part 1, to the point where I've actually seen a lot of people attempt to defend his actions. The thing is that he's portrayed as this being that is so incredibly strong, so incredibly fierce, and so intimidating, and something that should have been an easy counter when it came to the ninja. But the thing is that on so many occasions, we just simply see that was never actually the case. Zarkt gets absolutely dogged on by the Ninjago community because he lost the fight fairly easily to both Lloyd and to Pixel in particular, and people have used this as a case point of Zarkt isn't actually all that, and he is not as powerful as he truly seems to actually be. But the counterpoint I've seen people bring to the argument is the fact that Zarkt would have simply just underestimated the ninja, and in particular Pixel, and people seem to be reflecting that then in the fight at the end of Season 3 Part 1, where Zarkt actually wins in a fight against Kai. So you could note that maybe he stopped underestimating his enemies, and maybe that is how he truly was able to be defeated. But personally speaking, I just think they just wanted Pixel to have a cool fight moment. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but the thing is that if you want Pixel to have a really cool fight scene where she beats a Forbidden 5 member, it will come at the consequence of making that Forbidden 5 member look weaker in comparison, especially in this case because Zarkt just gets absolutely bullied by Pixel. And I'm not doubting Pixel's abilities by any stretch of the imagination, I'm just saying that it made Zarkt look incredibly weak, to the point where there's debate about it. But it's just such a counter to the personality that we were told about Zarkt. He's meant to be a character who has no empathy. He's meant to be someone who mocks at his own opponents. He's meant to be someone that is truly ruthless and has no care in the world when it actually comes down to it. But the thing is that he also is portrayed as being quite hot-headed, which is fine, but it does just seem to come at the consequence of these personality clashes. Of course, he can be maniacal and he can be this big bad, but the thing is that if he easily loses his head, it's just going to cause him to maybe look incompetent at the exact same time. Outside of that, he has the elemental power of misfortune. I couldn't tell you what that elemental power actually does, but the thing is that he only uses it, I believe, once, and it's on the van at the very start of Season 3 Part 1. So he used it once, never again for the rest of the season, and also it's not really explained what it truly is. It just seems to be that Zark can just fire this energy ball that seems to make things happen that are just a little bit inconvenient. Again, taking the van example. Oh, the tires are gone. I guess like the most unlucky thing that could have happened to them is that they had a flat. I don't know, maybe they could have lost their lives instead. It just comes across as such a nothing power, and when in comparison to the potential of Decay, or Brute Force, or Swarm, the thing is that it just looks kind of incompetent at the exact same time. Honestly, it just feels like he never really had anything to actually do. And that also just kind of feels by design. But hey, like all the others, his design's alright. I mean, I don't like it as much as most people, but I do still think it's a cool design. And in Season 3 Part 2, again, he has absolutely nothing to do, apart from the fact that he is the one that goes to the Cave of Bells in Mysterium. But again, he doesn't really hold up much of a fight. Noct has a much better fight scene than he has. Zark just feels, again, very much there. And this is where it's just always coming down to. It's just the lack of screen time doesn't do much. But in the case of Zark, it was definitely a case of this character didn't have a lot of screen time, and he also felt not really fleshed out, and he felt like the victim when it came to a cool fight scene for Pixel. So I understand why a lot of people don't like him, and a lot of people make fun of him, because he definitely has a lot of reason for that to be the case. But in my opinion, he is not the worst Forbidden 5 member. So let's get into the last one. Rox is without the doubt the worst of the Forbidden 5. I think it's no debate whatsoever, she is truly the worst of the bunch. Rox was set up as this big bad, the leader of the Forbidden 5, the true ambassador when it comes to this fierce group. But the thing is that she somehow feels like the most incompetent of the lot. We do technically get more time with her in similar vein to Noct because she was in Season 2 Part 2. However, she was in possession of Jordana's body. So it's not exactly like we got a lot of Rox herself because she had to betray herself for someone else. So in reality, we only really got to see who she truly was in Season 3. She is portrayed as this merciless character, this big bad, this person who will stop nothing and will take on anyone that is in her way. In reality, she just comes across as this massive egotist who is completely incompetent when it actually comes down to any combat scenario. We never really actually get to see her during any sort of combat. Of course, she does this the occasional little bit, but we never actually get to see her skill actually put to the test. For the most part, she just tells the Forbidden 5 to go and do things, and she just stands around as she goes and does her own. Honestly, it just comes across as someone who's just not really much of a threat. And even when she is put into the firing line, she just never really does much. And she has, like I once said before, one of the worst scenes I've ever seen in all of Ninjago. The thing is that when she goes to Aracor to be able to repair the prismatic blades, instead of actually just acknowledging the fact that Aracor wanted the ninja to turn up, she completely falls for his bait, and she just ends up summoning the ninja in one of the worst scenes I've ever seen in Ninjago. The fact that she didn't see the fact that she said, "I wish the ninja were here to prove you wrong," is just kind of beyond me. It is one of the worst things I ever saw, and the fact that she fell for it is just outright ridiculous. And even when she has one of the biggest fumbles I've ever seen, she still manages to capture Aracor. But instead of, say, wishing the ninja were defeated, or getting rid of the ninja, or just achieving her plan in any way, she instead uses Aracor as a massive ego play. She tells them to kneel the ninja before her and tell her that she's better than them, and that causes Sora to be able to break out Aracor. Honestly, the worst scene I've ever seen in Dragon's Rising, if not the entire show. It is just proof that Rox is so beyond incompetent that it's honestly laughable that she got this far. This is not some high intelligent maniacal being. This is someone who's getting tricked at every single given moment. Because not only did she get tricked by Aracor, she got tricked by Thunderfang in the end. She just assumed Thunderfang would just give her all the power that she wanted, when in reality, he just had absolutely no intention on that, and she had absolutely no sort of inkling that that was going to be the case. There is just nothing remotely even redeeming about her personality. I mean, it's not even just the personality where it ends. She has the elemental power of fear, and she uses it maybe once. Even then she doesn't. I think she goes to use it against Aracor, but that is literally it. Her elemental power is not even used. Why is she not using her elemental ability? Why is she not doing anything to make herself a competent villain? There is just nothing redeemable about the character of Rox. There is no inkling for something more. There is nothing I can really say that's redeeming about her. She does legitimately nothing. And that extends into Season 3 Part 2. The fact is that all of the other Forbidden 5 members get a little fight scene here, or maybe collect some souls there. Rox stands around the entire season. She does nothing. She gets a scene where she comes back with a couple of souls. We don't even know where she got those from. But the thing is that is it. She gets one scene where she brings some souls back, and it's remarked that, ooh, she's able to do some stuff, but in reality, she is not even doing that on screen. She is doing nothing remotely to give us anything when it comes down to her. It is downright disappointing, and at worst, it's insulting. Like all the other ones, yeah, I like her design, but that is kind of where it ends. Like, she is every single problem with every single Forbidden 5 member encapsulated into one character. Where any of the Forbidden 5 members may have a specific issue I take, Rox definitely also has it. She's the byproduct of the worst aspects of all of these characters put together. There is nothing nice I can say about the character of Rox. Honestly, I find that there's a debate on who's the worst Forbidden 5 member to be almost laughable, because I would love to know if people actually even like this character. What happens? But hey, on an overall, she's one of the worst villains. Like, it goes without saying that she is one of the worst villains by far individually. Of course, the Forbidden 5 as an overall is a different story, but if you want me to rank all the individual 5 members, she is by far the worst. She has nothing nice I can say about her. I could at least squint my eyes and say something about Zarkt. I mean, Zarkt at the very least, it may be an animation error, but he does have a moment where you can kind of see his hands light up around the point where Thunderfang betrays them, which kind of gives the implication that he was going to fire his power of misfortune at Thunderfang in reaction to the betrayal, which is something. Rox does nothing! But with all of that aside, the Forbidden 5 on an overall is one of the most disappointing things that we've ever had from Dragon's Rising. They should have been their own threat. They should have been expanded upon. They should have had a part 1 and a part 2 all to themselves without the influence of Thunderfang. It would have done them wonders, and they really could have been set up as a true threat when it comes down to it. You could have had each of the 5 Forbidden 5 members link up to the 5 of the original ninja that were still active at the time. Of course, with the lack of Jay, you could have interacted each member with each of the other of the 5 ninja. It could have been really cool, and it could have been a really cool way to expand on it. And that's not the only thing they could have done to really amplify their effect. They could have just done so much more with the 5 that just would have made them so much more interesting. They could have made them bullies, for example. Of course, the ninja learn Rising Dragon technique, which nullifies Shattered Spin by all accounts. But you could have had this interesting dynamic where when the Forbidden 5 are up against the ninja with Rising Dragon, you could have had them really utilize their own skill, have them utilize their elemental power, have them utilize their fighting technique that we were told that they have. And then, when it's a ninja that doesn't have Rising Dragon, you really could have demonstrated the fact that they were dirty fighters and bullies. You could have had them then use Shattered Spin and just mop the floor with the people who they knew that they could take out easily. It could have been a really cool way to demonstrate that they were merciless, that they were intimidating, and they truly did not care, and they wanted to defeat the ninja. That's not even where it could end. You could also argue about individual little changes to all the Forbidden 5 members. You could have had, for example, Nox's elemental power be more expanded on, not have it look like Shattered Spin, and truly have Nox utilize it in a different way. You could have had Rox actually use her elemental power and really play into the fear aspect. Not horror-like, but at least some sort of thriller-esque scene with her that really demonstrated how intimidated she was. You could have had Kerr's elemental power expanded on as well. You could have had her actually utilize it. You could have had it even expanded on. You could have had Decay work in different ways. You could have had Kerr use her power to maybe even raise up fallen enemies, like skeletons for example, almost like a necromancer. It could have been really cool to have seen. You could have had Zarkt actually utilize Misfortune in an actual battle scenario. Say he blasts Pixel with Misfortune, and then she suffers some sort of system error, and that is how he wins his fights. That could have been cool as well. And then lastly, you could have had Drix. Honestly, Drix for the most part, like I said, is fairly infallible. He only really needed more time. But again, you could have expanded on the swarm aspect. aspect. Maybe have him become larger, smaller, maybe have the bugs be able to do different things to different people. Again, go back to the whole ninjoid aspect of things. With big buff Zane, maybe the swarm elemental power would have been able to help short out the big version of Zane. Who knows? There are so many different things you could have done with them all individually, and that was just off the top of my head. I mean, there are just so many different things you could have done if they just simply had more time. And like I said, that is just the biggest aspect of all when it comes down to it. But this is where I want to hand it off to you guys. What is your opinion on the Forbidden 5? What do you think they could have done more, or do you think you're happy with how they are as it stands? Do you think they could have had the whole season to themselves? Do you like the fact they were linked to Thunderfang? There are so many different aspects of the Forbidden 5, but as it stands when it comes to me, whilst I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole thing of the Forbidden Frauds, I definitely see the argument as to why they are dubbed that, because there's a lot of reason to say they are. I think there are just so many glimmers of potential when it comes to them. There are so many moments that could have been fantastic with them that they truly could have just expanded on to really make something fantastic. But the lack of screen time and the emphasis on Thunderfang really did eliminate that for the most part. It's not like they're completely irredeemable. Like I said, Nox and Drift are honestly fairly fine. But the thing is that all of them needed that treatment, and they just simply didn't get it. And I think that is the biggest issue above all else. Have the Forbidden 5 be something more. But unfortunately, it seems to be that this is where their story ended. So forevermore, they're gonna have so much wasted potential. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching, and take care. Okay,